Welcome to the Signal Pres podcast.
Welcome to the Signal Pres podcast, the place for you to learn, to grow, and to get connected to the body of Christ here at Signal Pres. I'm Joey Sherrod. I'm one of your hosts.
And I am Abby Hutto. I'm your co-host. She's back.
Congratulations. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say.
Just accept it.
Accept it. All right. You know what? This is going to be an episode about accepting reality.
Accepting reality when it does not meet expectation. And you know what?
I no longer know what to expect.
I know. Well, I know what I did not expect. What is not meeting expectation right now is that if we had like one of those little barometers in here, is that what you do to measure humidity? No, that doesn't sound
pressure.
right.
Yeah,
You're right. It's not that.
Humidifometers.
You would see that there's 100% humidity in this room and
That's
that
right.
it is hot.
It is hot.
Because it's the hottest week. One of the hottest weeks
Yeah.
of the year.
It is. Yeah, it's a rough week out there.
It is. Where you been? This podcast is like late in coming. You've been all over.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Who, me? Yes,
I
you.
was like, physically, spiritually.
No. Wouldn't that be awesome if I was like, Joey, tell us how you're feeling. All your feelings.
Like, isn't that what Jesus says in Genesis 3?
Where are you?
Excuse me, God. I guess Jesus was there too. Yes.
No, we've been
Adam,
off for a little bit.
Where you been?
Where you been? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We've been off for a little bit because
I was in Colorado.
You've been around.
Yeah, I was in Colorado. It was hot. There was less humidity, but it was hot. I was there for General Assembly.
General Assembly. That's right.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
thanks for doing good work
And
for our
now-
denomination.
I'm back. Scott's back. Philip's back. Michelle and Carol and Chris Poole and all of us are back. Mary Hollingsworth. Yeah.
Donna McKenzie.
Donna McKenzie. We're all
Oh,
back.
y'all took full crew.
We did.
It's exciting.
We did.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we're glad you're back.
Good to be back.
And we're back. We're glad to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, we're back. We're back on the podcast, and while we were gone, we've turned the page from everyone's new favorite book of their Bible, Leviticus, to everyone's about to be favorite book of their Bible,
Numbers.
Yeah. Can we just say that when it comes to the book of Numbers has, for those of us who read our Bibles in English, it has been presented with a challenge to surmount. Like Numbers could have used like a good English PR person, right? Because when you come across, I mean, for some people, actually, I say that back. For some people, they might come across and they say numbers. Sweet.
That's exactly
I'm
what I'm
excited.
here for early in the morning.
Yeah. But for others of us, when we see the word numbers, perhaps.
Our hands start to get sweaty, start to feel like we might vomit.
Exactly. We say, I was told there would be no math.
That's right.
But in the Hebrew, the name of this book is actually In the Wilderness.
For real?
Yeah, that's right.
That would have been such a boss name for this book.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm going to have to file a complaint. I don't know who with, but
Exactly. King Jimmy. I don't know who it is. But yeah, it's so interesting that in the Hebrew Bible, it's always the first like few words of the book are the
that is cool.
So yeah. Huh. We're going to talk about numbers today.
But not the math kind.
We're going to talk about in the wilderness. And
Did you like math when you were younger?
I did.
Oh, that's nice.
I did. It was simple. It was clean. What about you?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I still cannot figure out a tip on a check. I have to always just use my calculator on my phone.
No shame.
And now that I started doing sourdough.
Before you had a phone, did you bring a calculator?
Like a nerd, I'm like pushing my glasses up and doing my tip.
I'm sorry.
No, I probably just looked at the waiter and was like, how much do you think I should be?
And they were
a lot more.
They were happy to tell you.
I was a good tipper back then.
Sorry.
No, I'm making sourdough, and which means like every few days I'm feeding my sourdough, and then I'm feeding it again, and then I'm baking it, and then I'm feeding it. It's just a constant. It's a relationship I now have that I can't get out of. But you have to do everything by grams, and like when you're trying to like double or do half, or so Alexa and I just do math together, and I'll say, Alexa, What's half of
Alyssa?
Alyssa. Alika. Such a great Allegra. Anyways, so that's.
I don't know about that.
So that's what I've been doing. I've been using Alexa, and I was like, man, this would have been such a great help when I was younger. If I could just sit there and do my math homework and be like, what was 34 times 5 again? Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we've already dispelled the myth that this book is all about math.
That's right.
So, Joey,
Yeah.
what is this book all about?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it being four things. We're going to talk about this from four perspectives today. So we're going to talk about kind of the outline of the book, how people navigate it. Going to talk about themes in the book. Going to talk about where we see Jesus in the book. And then we're going to talk about...
how can we pastorally care for our hearts as we walk through this book?
There you go. There you go. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's right.
There we go.
Let's go.
Again, just kind of like we said at Leviticus, it is just important just to kind of step back and say that this is a part of a narrative, right? And so Genesis kind of gives us the beginning of God's people, Exodus, their formation as they come out of slavery and begin their journey. Leviticus, the importance of God's presence as we worship him in the tabernacle. And then Numbers is kind of the continuation of the journey. So it's really a book of pilgrimage in lots of different ways.
Yeah. I thought there are so many helpful resources that we can maybe put in the show notes if we remember how and to do it.
That's right. Show notes.
But I do think it's helpful to think about like one of the things that I watched on Numbers from the Bible Project just talked about how like it is a continuation of the story, but it's the story of the wanderings in the wilderness. And so it's kind of set up along those lines. So let's talk about how we see that in the outline. So if you were outlining Numbers, how would you outline it?
Yeah. I would say 3 big chunks. So Numbers 1 through 10 gives us instruction about God's people and as they make their way, like what the camp looks like. So we've learned about what happens in the tabernacle in Leviticus, but now God's people are around the tabernacle. So we get a sense of how many people are there, how they arrange themselves around the tabernacle, and then how the tabernacle can continue to be a place where God dwells because God's people are continuing to sanctify themselves. That's Numbers 1 through 10. And then 11 through 26 is God's people on the way. This
is the travel log.
The travel log. That's right. Yeah. So as God promised, he would lead them with his presence. The Shekinah glory goes ahead of them, and so they pack up the tabernacle and they set along their way. Initially go to the promised land, but things get complicated.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute.
That's right. And then, so it's all about their journeys in the wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Moab. And then Numbers 26 through 36 is about really the next generation, because the journey takes a little bit longer than they initially thought. And so there's a new generation, the first generation that had not experienced Egypt. So, yeah. What would you say about all of that?
Well, just if you're looking at like the Pentateuch as a whole, I do think it's helpful. Like if you pull out like these large sections of law and you're trying to just follow the storyline, then it does make sense that like a huge amount of Leviticus is Levitical law. And we've talked about that in our Leviticus podcast. But it does help us to kind of think about like, okay, so they were at the base of Mount Sinai, and then where do they go from there? Because Leviticus is telling us a lot about like the law, but if we pull that out, then this just continues the story for us, which I think because Leviticus is in between Exodus and Numbers, I think we can kind of lose our bearings on what's actually happening here. And then if we remember that Deuteronomy is really like Moses retelling the law and giving them his final like words and testament, then really Joshua comes right after this. So like, if we're thinking about like pulling out the things that are not narrative, then we can kind of think through like, oh, okay, like this is chronicling from Mount Sinai when we receive the law until we get into the promised land in Joshua. This is telling us what the events that happened.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a little bit of a helpful way to think. I mean, there's also narrative sprinkled throughout Leviticus and Deuteronomy, but like if we kind of think of it in those chunks that like this is telling us how they get to where they get and what happens in their hearts along the way that actually presents to us the people that you just mentioned, like the people who will go into the promised land, like what has been happening in their generation and what's shaping them to become the people who can take over the promised land and walk in obedience.
Yeah.
Some of the times. Not all of the times.
Maybe.
So yeah, I do think it's helpful to kind of think of it in narrative chunks.
Yeah.
Which does just help us. I think that helps highlight our themes when we think about the narrative chunks.
Yeah.
Just like a little bit of a numbers hack. I like to draw what is being said because sometimes I get confused and I'm like, okay, wait, I'm going to map out this camp. And that's how I've been able to understand what it looked like.
Yeah. That's right.
So,
yeah, I think that is helpful because I do think it can, because we're reading these spatial descriptions, it can be easy to kind of just be like, okay, moving along.
Yeah. Or like skim. Okay, here we go.
Right. Yes. Yeah. But I do think, this is kind of I'm starting to edge into the theme part of the thing, but I do think that one theme I do think is like God's presence and like the importance of like space, like like there's all these descriptions of like where the tribes are in relation to the tabernacle and where the priests are in relation to the tabernacle. So tabernacle's in the center, and then the Levites and other priests are in a circle around that. And then the 12 tribes are in a square, 3 tribes on each side of the square. And that, I think on the one hand, that's communicating like God dwells in the midst of his people.
Yeah.
Like how close God wants to be with us, which I think is like a beautiful thing just to think about. And it's just interesting just to think about how that picture just keeps popping up, like even just the very specifics of this picture. So in like Ezekiel, towards the end of Ezekiel, I think somewhere between chapter 40 and 48 of Ezekiel, like when Ezekiel is post-exile imagining, God coming back to his temple, like this image, same image, got around the tribes around that. And then it shows up again actually in Revelation, in Revelation 21, when the new Jerusalem is described. It's described as a city with the names of 3 tribes on each of the 4 walls of the city, which is just, and God is in the midst of her.
That's right. And that's the theme that takes us from Genesis all the way to Revelation is God's desire to dwell in the midst of his people.
Yeah.
Creating a garden for them when that got broken, then creating a nation for them, then creating a country for them, then creating a new community in the church, and then finally being with us in the new heavens and new earth. That even though we sin, the theme of God being with us in the midst of us never gets lost.
Yeah.
And that was one thing I thought was interesting. I was looking at a commentary on Numbers, and it talked about how like it's so easy for us to like look at the names and think this has literally nothing to do with me. Like these are other people's names and I don't even know who they are. But they were talking about how like what that would have meant to the original recipients of this to see their family's names written down in God's remembrance.
Yeah.
And how that, even though those are not those are our ancestors by faith now, but even though we're not related to them physically by blood, that is a reminder to us that God knows us by name and that he remembers our name and he will be faithful to us because from Genesis to Revelation, his desire is to dwell with us. Therefore, he knows us by name. So it's just his faithfulness is just seen throughout this book in ways that are unexpected.
Yeah.
And you have to like kind of step back and look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Kind of like those pieces of art where like there's 2 pictures in it and you have to like cross your eyes and then uncross them and kind of cross them and cross them.
Magic eyes?
Is that what it's called? where you can see different things.
Yeah.
I feel like with numbers, sometimes, you know what I'm talking
That's different
about?
than a magic eye.
No,
Yes,
it's not magic eyes.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
But-
I know what you mean. Yeah, like an MC Escher type thing or something like
Sure,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
I just know sometimes you see an old woman's face.
Sometimes you see a young woman. So. Yeah.
I feel like that's how it is with numbers. You have to almost like read it and then step back and like cross your eyes and then look at it again and then see, all these themes are popping out that I might miss on a first glance.
Yeah, that's good.
So
Absolutely.
So there's the theme of God being with us.
Yeah, I think space, we talked about that. I mean, I do think, God cares about the way that this space, because the space communicates something important, right? I mean, sometimes there's an instinct I think we have to say, well, no, I can meet God anywhere, in any space. And that's true, right? But God does care about our space, and our spaces say something about what it is we believe. Like I was thinking about the way that the tribes were gathered around the tabernacle. It did make me think about like what the shape of our sanctuary communicates as well, right? That it's like, it's a cross shape if viewed from above. That says something about the kind of people we are and like the kind of space that we inhabit and the kind of vaulted ceilings, cast our eyes up, so I think space does matter. There's like theological truth in those things that's worth just meditating on.
And if you want to think about that more, we have these beautiful books in the narthex.
That's right.
That highlight very important things in our sanctuary that would be easy to miss.
Yeah, that's right.
In all of our beautiful stained glass.
Shout out Barbie Reeves.
That's right. We are grateful to Barbie
for
putting that together. It's actually really, I've gone through it. When I first got here, Gerald gave me that and I went around and looked at all the different stained glass and like even up in the balcony, there's some like really significant pieces of stained glass in the balcony, but you never get to sit up there.
No. Although Scott sat up there recently.
I heard.
Yeah. So.
People are like, it's opposite day.
He's right.
It's crazy.
He's always watching.
I'm going to have to do that one day too.
Another theme, I think leadership is a theme in Numbers as well. As you read along, it's just, there's important like leaders of tribes named, of the 12 tribes. We see the importance of leadership in positive ways. We see Moses' leadership. We see Aaron's leadership. We also see the failure of leadership as well.
The many rebellions.
Feels
like a Star Wars movie.
That's right.
Someone's always rising up and rebelling.
Exactly. The failure to one of the key events that happens in the book of Numbers is they send kind of a scouting party into the promised land, and they actually pick leaders from each of the 12 tribes to do that, and then they come back. At least 10 of them come back and say, "Nope, we can't do this." So
10 of the 12, only 2, little Caleb and Joshua.
That's right. Yeah.
Say, our God is big enough. We don't need to be afraid.
Yeah.
And also, there's so many grapes.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's worth pondering that, the importance of leadership. I think also we see God's like determined patience with his people, in spite of their failures of leadership and all those things. God just continues to be gracious and kind, to be merciful to his people in spite of their resistance and complaining and all the things.
One of the places, you see that throughout, like constantly, because there's like several rebellions that happen in this book, and the people complain all the time.
Yeah.
All of the time. And God still provides for them and is still faithful to them. But I think one of the ways you see it really beautifully is in the travel log towards the end of it, when we're talking about like when they're going into the plains of Moab and Balak. Is that how you say that? Or Balak? How would you say?
I think I always said Balak, but okay. I don't know if that's right or not.
Let's say Balak. That sounds cool. He's a king that enlists the help of a a foreign, a pagan prophet to bring down curses on God's people. And this is the whole the Balaam story where the donkey opens his mouth and speaks to him and says, I'm not going to go any further. There's an angel there and I'm trying to protect you. Leave me alone. Stop beating me. So it's very interesting. When you get there, you're going to enjoy it. It's very exciting. But one of the things that's really beautiful about that theme is that while God's people are complaining and rebelling and being faithless to him, he is literally blessing them through this prophet who even, I don't even know if he knows who God is, but God is using him to bless God's people, because every time he tries to curse them, only blessings come out of his mouth. And so it is just such an interesting, from the viewpoint of God who is high above, he knows I am leading them into places of blessing. They do not trust me, but I will be faithful to them. And then we have these little vignettes of stories of the people actively rebelling and God actively blessing them at the same moment, which is just such a cool, cross your eyes and look at it and then it pops out at you kind of moment. Because you get caught up on venomous snakes biting people and stuff. But
that's right.
It's a lot of really beautiful things.
Yeah.
So any other themes we see?
Yeah,
in the book of Numbers?
Big ones that come to mind for me. I mean, I do think spiritual journeying is also, we kind of talked about that a little bit, but it is, I mean, before the podcast started, we were talking about the kind of the idea of wilderness, what God does in wilderness is this sense of being on the way, not home yet, God's presence with us, what he does in these seasons of pilgrimage. Yeah, we might get back to that later.
We'll talk about that towards the pastoral encouragement towards the end.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about talking about outline, themes, seeing Jesus. When do we want to talk about questions we might have?
Yeah. I don't know. Have we talked about seeing Jesus yet?
No, we haven't done that yet. Yeah. I'm just saying, should we talk about, there are some questions we might have? Let's do it since I've already talked about it.
That's great.
So there are some things that we'll go through that we will have questions about. So one of those things is that when the spies come back from searching out the promised land and 10 of the 12 say, this is too hard, we can't do it, we should turn back and go back to Egypt. God then declares that this generation will not enter into the promised land, thus the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. So I imagine our people might have some questions about that, but from a big picture viewpoint, what might God be doing in that 40-year time span? Not just being vindictive, obviously. He's not just saying, well, you didn't want to go in. Well, you can't go in now. But what might God be at work doing in those 40 years in order to prepare the next generation to go into the promised land? What are some thoughts you have on that?
Yeah. I mean, I do think about that period in terms of refining, testing in the biblical sense of testing, which is a sense of revealing what's true and then showing us the gap between that and where we want to be, and as a way of shepherding us to that. And I do think that when a people has been enslaved for 430 years, that the kind of instincts, trauma, all those things, it takes more than, a year to get that out of you, right? And so some of this, in a way that might feel a little counterintuitive to us, and may feel counterintuitive to them, what is God working? He'd gotten them out of Egypt, but he still has to get Egypt out of them.
Yeah,
and so that's that sense of because we see those instincts. When you have lived in scarcity for so long, then you see scarcity everywhere.
Yeah.
And so depending on God continually in this season, your instinct is to say, I'm back where I was. In fact, I want to go back there because, at least I didn't have to hope.
Yeah.
At least I knew what I was going to get.
Slavery felt easy.
Yeah.
Compared to trusting and walking by faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an interesting concept to think about. Those who enter into the promised land would have been 20, I think, is the age cutoff. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's 20, the age of accountability, and 20 and younger, any children born in that 40 years, 20 and younger. And just how like anyone older than that really would have been so shaped and formed by the generational impact of slavery, and how God is in many ways like retraining. Repetition is one of the ways we retrain our brains after we've experienced something traumatic. We have repetition that helps form new neurological pathways. And so they get to have daily repetition of waking up every morning and seeing God is still there, waking up every morning and seeing God is still provided for me. He is still giving me manna from heaven, going to bed every night, looking out the doorway of my tent, seeing God is still there. God is in fire, leading us, protecting us in cloud by day, fire by night, just a constant present. It's almost like he's doing 40 years of like retraining their brains and their bodies to learn to trust him again, so that when they do face things that are scary, which they will going into the promised land, they have now 40 years of history with him of every day taking care of their everyday needs, so that they will trust him when the big need arises. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of like why ending our days, which we'll talk about this more as we get towards the end of the year in our practice of examine and like looking at our lives at the end of every day. One of the greatest practices we can do is look back at our day and say, where was God faithful to me? Where did he show up? Because I'm retraining my brain and my body to remember that God is faithful and true, and that he keeps his promises to me. Because I have the heart of someone who grew up in Egypt. Like each of us comes into the world with a heart of a slave to sin. And so we need to remember again and again and again that God is faithful every day, and we can trust him. So it's interesting that that's a huge part of what he's doing in those 40 years.
Yeah.
Is retraining their hearts to trust him.
Yeah.
What other questions might we have? Do we want to cover anything else?
That's a good question. Yeah.
We'll talk about Moses and the rock.
Okay.
Let's transition to Jesus, and then we'll come back to Moses.
Yeah.
Where do we see Jesus in the book of Numbers?
Yes. Yes. We see Jesus in the episode that you referenced. The kind of, there was grumbling and complaining, and then serpents came out and bit God's people, and then God told Moses to put a bronze serpent on his staff. If they looked to the serpent, then they would be healed from the poison of the adders. Yeah,
and all they needed to do was like literally just turn their head and look, and some of them refused, which I think is really sad.
Yeah.
But just to look to him the serpent was all they needed. Yeah. And where does that show up again, Joey?
It shows up coming from Jesus' mouth in John's gospel. He talks about himself being lifted up.
Yep.
Like that bronze serpent.
That's right. So John 3, make sure I've got the right verse. Yeah. So everyone knows John 3:16. For God so loved the world. But how many of us actually look back to the previous verses? So John 3:14 says, this is Jesus talking to Nicodemus. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. So it's just beautiful to see what was a really tragic event in their history actually was pointing them towards the one who would save them from the serpent, the real serpent.
That's right. Yeah. Beautiful place.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other thoughts come to mind for you? I've got one more, but.
Oh, well, I mean, I was just going to talk about Moses and the rock, but do you have another one?
No, go for it. That was
the other one?
Mine too.
Okay. Yeah. So those are kind of all in the same section, which I think is interesting. All right. I might mess this up, so fact check me. But one of the times they're thirsty, one of the many times they're thirsty and complaining that they're thirsty and hungry and they want to go back to Egypt. God tells Moses to speak to the rock. And this is different than a previous occasion where they were thirsty and complaining and threatening to go back to Egypt, where God told Moses to strike the rock.
Yeah.
This time he tells Moses to speak to the rock. and water would flow from the rock for the people as it did the first time. Moses ends up striking the rock twice, which is against what God had told him to do. Water flows from the rock and the people are saved. But later on, we are told, we'll talk about Moses in just a minute, but later on we're told in 1 Corinthians 10 that Jesus is that rock, that he is the rock that the water flows from. So 1 Corinthians 10, verse 4. It's so hot in here that I'm having a hard time turning the pages in my Bible. Okay, 1 Corinthians 10, verse 4. This is what Paul says. He's talking about how they passed through the sea. They were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. So we see that, like, Paul is connecting the water that flowed from the rock on those two occasions, that rock was Christ, and that he was feeding them spiritually while still taking care of their physical thirst. Mm-hmm. So that's another place where we see Jesus. Again, you have to cross your eyes and look into the New Testament. And there he is.
There he is.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because I have had a hard time with poor old Moses, who spends all this time leading these people and strikes the rock and then does not get to enter into the promised land. So help us understand what could be happening there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a handful of things. I know you have a thought as well, but I do think one thought that I have is that I do think that all of the Old Testament is straining towards the Messiah who will actually fulfill all the promises and complete all of the longed for desires of God's people. And so we see all of these types throughout the Old Testament that are foreshadows of the one who is to come. And they show us aspects of the Messiah's character, but they're not the Messiah. And so I do think that one of the things that we see in Moses at that moment is the ways in which, like, he is both a type of the one who is to come and yet falls short. He's not able to enter the promised land himself because he's just like those whom he's delivering, you know, and he's in need of deliverance himself. And so, I think Moses, goes beyond God's word and then also claims like a partnership with God, or an identity with God that he says we, that, I think the words that are used in Numbers is like, why are you, you did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel. So there's a sense in which, Moses is in Adam, just like everybody else is as well. But there's also something. It's not like Moses' story ends there.
Yeah. So that's, and I may have already said this on the podcast. So if you're listening and you're like, she's already said this, I'm sorry. We're just going to say it again.
Tap that forward 15 seconds.
That's right. Or maybe a minute. But I have always really struggled with this because I feel a sadness for Moses that, like, he's worked so hard. He's been with these people for so long. And then at the end, he makes one mistake and he's barred from entering into the thing that he had hoped for. And as you read through, like, you'll see as we go through Numbers and as we get into Deuteronomy, like, Moses pleads with God, please, like, can you change your mind? Would you let me into the promised land? Could I go with them? And God consistently says no. And even at one point, God says, Moses, it's time to stop asking me this. Like, don't ask me again. This is my decision. And so Moses, as we'll see, as we head through the rest of Numbers and Deuteronomy, gets to watch the people walk into the promised land, but then he dies and God buries him. And he does not get to go into the promised land. And that has bothered me for a very long time, up until like this past year. I was reading Deuteronomy, and I was also reading in the Gospels and the Mount of Transfiguration. And like there's this moment where it feels like Moses' story just wraps around in the most beautiful way that so few of us actually get to see the culmination of our stories. But we have this moment where we get to see Moses on a different mountain, and it was probably in the same area. I don't know which mountains are which mountains, but this mountain where Jesus is being transfigured before Peter, James, and John, and Moses and Elijah come, and they meet with Jesus it says to talk about his exodus, to talk about the moment when he will depart this earth through the suffering of the cross, and he will accomplish redemption for all of God's people. So here is Moses talking to the man who will fulfill the very thing he started. So this exodus out of Egypt that he was frustrated in constantly because he could not deliver the people that he loved from the greatest thing that they needed, which was deliverance from their sin. They continued to sin and to grumble, and they even didn't do the things that he trained them to do when they got to the promised land. So here's a man frustrated in his call who does not get to see the end that he wanted to see, but he gets this moment on this Mount of Transfiguration to talk to Jesus and to encourage Jesus in what he's about to do. And I cannot wait to get there to say, like, Moses, what was that like for you? That to know in that moment that God had barred you from something you had wanted so deeply in life, but to get to see the culmination of that and the fruit of your labor coming true thousands of years later in the man, Jesus Christ. It just it helps me with my own heart when I realize, like, there are things in my life that I will not get to accomplish. I won't get to see the end of them. I can work on them now and I can work faithfully, but I won't see the end of those things. And I can get frustrated with God about that. And there are things that I will struggle with and disappointments I will live with until the day I die. But can the story of Moses give me hope that in these wilderness moments, which we'll talk more about in a moment, but in these wilderness experiences, could God possibly be doing more than I could even ask or imagine? The answer is absolutely, because he was for Moses. Moses wanted to enter into the promised land, and God, for reasons I don't think we will ever really know until we get there, if Moses decides to tell us. It's his story to share. But for reasons we don't understand, Moses was barred from entering into the promised land, but he got to share in the glory of God in the end and got to see the fulfillment of everything he longed for, because God had a better plan in mind for him all along. And it just reminds me not to judge God's heart towards me based on my current disappointment, which I am prone to do. So,
yeah.
What other thoughts do you have about Moses?
I think I could have more thoughts, but I think that's well said.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. We want to end with, what are the encouragements we can draw from the wilderness?
Yeah. So many. I will say, again, just God's determination to be with his people and to lead them and to go with them. I did, it's, there's that in Exodus 33, after the idolatry with the golden calf, there's that moment where God says that he might not go with his people, and Moses pleads that he would. And this is, in some ways, the answer to Moses' plea that he will go with his people. And I do think that that's an important both guide for how we think about our life, like God going with us, leading us, like going when he leads, stopping when he stops, going along, like, and also that he's with us in that, because that's what we want most.
Yeah.
Why would we go ahead if he's not with us? And so abiding in that, knowing the goodness of his presence, because eventually where we want to go is, we don't want anything more or less than God.
Yeah.
Right. That's
absolutely.
what we want. That's
we don't know that that's what we want, but
Yeah.
that is what we want.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, intellectually, we know it. In the moment. Yeah. So that's one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. I think for me, the encouragement of the book of Numbers is in the wilderness, which I wish is what we called it.
That's right.
Just this idea of wilderness seasons. So I love Paul Miller's book of Praying Life. And in that book, he talks a lot about how we will enter into wilderness seasons, and everyone God loves goes into the wilderness. Even his perfect son, Jesus, enters into the wilderness. So all of us will find ourselves in wilderness seasons. So it's not a declaration that God doesn't love you if you find yourself in a wilderness season. But our wilderness seasons really are seasons that are marked by expectation, not meeting reality. And so you'll see that throughout the book of Numbers. You'll see the people saying like, we thought there'd be food here. We thought there'd be water here. This is not what we expected. We just want to go back. Their expectation is not meeting their current reality. And so in those wilderness seasons, what marks them is this disappointment with God, with ourselves, with our situations. And what bubbles up in that disappointment when expectation does not meet reality are the very things that God is trying to refine in us. To like when you refine gold, when you turn up the heat and all the dross comes to the surface and you scrape that off so that the gold can be refined. That's what a wilderness season produces in us. It bubbles to the surface the things that we don't want to keep anyways, so that God can refine us. And it's hard because I think wilderness seasons, they're hard to understand until we get to the other side of them and we can look back on them and say like, oh, this is what God was doing in me. In the middle, it just feels hard. Expectation is not meeting reality, and we're frustrated and we're disappointed and we're sad and we feel lonely. But what you just said is the reality of a wilderness season. As those things bubble up, as God refines us and turns up the heat in parts of our lives and scrapes off the things that are not pure in us, and we lose things like our pride and our certainty that we know what's right, and our willful determination to make what we want happen. As those things are bubbled to the surface and God scrapes them off, what we are often left with, if the wilderness season does its good work in us, is God himself. We're left with letting go of a situation that we really wanted to turn out differently, or a relationship that didn't work out the way that we wanted it to, or a disappointment in a big area of life. And we're left with the knowledge that God is enough and that his character has been faithful to us and he is with us even in this disappointment. And that truly does become enough, because that in wilderness seasons, that's often all we have. And so it has to be enough, and it is enough. And so I think that's one helpful way to read Numbers, is to like walk through and see the grumbling of God's people and say, okay, where is my expectation not meeting my reality? How is my heart responding? How does God want me to bring this to him in a way that can refine me and change me? Because I know what I want is that on the other side of this wilderness season, I want to be holding really tightly to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that's what this season can give me.
That's great. That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I, in the same way, I do think Numbers in the wilderness is a wonderful way to reset our expectations for the Christian life, and to think about the maybe sort of subterranean metaphors that we think are kind of control our expectations for life. And I do think pilgrimage and journey are tried and true metaphors for the Christian life. You know, we think about Hebrews 11 or the Psalms or things like that, that we are on our way to our home, but we're not there yet. And I think sometimes, particularly during the summer, or any sort of full season of life, it can be easy to have other metaphors for what life is supposed to be like. Life is supposed to be like a vacation, you know. Life.
No, it is.
That's right. You know, life is supposed to be. Life is a cruise, you know, where I'll be
with
entertained.
All you can eat buffet.
That's right. Yeah, it's an endless cruise. Yeah, we're not tourists through life. We're pilgrims, you know. So we're not looking for diversions that will distract us from our life. We're trying to make our way to a certain place, and I think that's a helpful resetting of our expectations. And I think it helps us, although it's perhaps a little disappointing.
Yeah.
to think about our lives like that way. It does reset our expectations. And I do think it helps us to maybe hold a little bit less tightly to our lives, because we recognize that we are making use of things, good gifts that God gives us, so that we can eventually get to our homeland. Like, a hotel room's great, we enjoy a hotel room when we know that it's just a stopover on our way home. But nobody wants to live in a hotel room. Yeah, but sometimes I think that's kind of how we treat our day-to-day lives, is we try to clutch these things. And then when we recognize that, they were never meant to be our home, we feel pretty disappointed and frustrated. And
when we live for vacation and come home from vacation exhausted, we realize.
Yeah. You're speaking hypothetically.
Oh, yeah. All my vacations are amazing.
Yeah. So I do think... we are, and all the things that are in Numbers in that picture of pilgrimage, I think are really helpful. God's presence, going where He goes when He goes, leaving Egypt behind, not just outside of us but inside of us, and learning new ways so that we can eventually go, not being intimidated by the spiritual giants that seem to be ahead of us in the land, but instead having courage, and then also realizing that when we inevitably wander off the path, God's gracious and He's providing for us, and just like He always has.
And the clear teaching of Scripture is that all of that only happens in a wilderness.
Yeah.
Hence the book of Numbers.
AKA in the wilderness.
In the wilderness. Well, hopefully this has been a helpful flyover intro to the book of Numbers, which we will be in for the next little bit. And but remember, always email us your questions. We haven't gotten questions in a long time.
Yeah, we're still sitting on a couple of questions about Revelation.
Yeah, but we'll get there when we get to Revelation, which we will by the end of the year. So
exactly.
But yeah, anything
unless
that you
Jesus comes back, and then
all
your questions will be answered.
Yeah, let's pray for that. But yeah, email us your questions as you come across them, especially. We don't have all the answers, but we do want to help you equip yourself to understand God's word for yourself.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, this was fun.
This is
maybe
fun.
Next time it won't be so hot.
Yeah, maybe next time it won't be so hot. But I think we are regularly, we need to have people back on who are like, Leviticus, least favorite book. Numbers, least favorite book. Proverbs, least favorite book.
I know.
And then Robert Kulisek.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy.
It's coming for you, Robert.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks for listening, friends.
Yep. Happy praying.
Thanks for listening to the Signal Pres podcast. I want to thank our extensive production team, beginning with Matt Broom, sound man extraordinaire.
And thank you to Hannah Sutton and Jackie Carpenter for helping us out with all of our technical difficulties and making it possible for you to listen to this podcast.